Today we're going to do something different and we're going to take a look at the final matches of pro wrestlers who passed away. Usually we look back at certain superstars and we remember their best matches and moments, and that's a good thing. It's those matches and moments that help turn superstars into legends, but it can also be kinda eye-opening when we see their last matches and we see how things ended up. Sometimes it's good and the final bell took place in front of a large television audience. Sometimes it can be quite dreary with only a few fans in attendance watching a guy who was no longer getting those big paychecks. But it's still kind of fascinating seeing where and how legacies officially ended, and it does make you wonder sometimes if these final matches are really how the guys wanted to go out. Sometimes money could be an issue, I guess, and the guys have no choice but to keep wrestling, or they just didn't know how to stop and they would take bookings at every given opportunity. But whatever the case, we'll take a look at a couple today and we'll see what happened during a few superstars' final matches. I'm going by their final recorded matches today. CageMatch.net is a great source for match listings and it's the source I've used for all my videos really. So today I'm going by the final recorded match we have for these guys that's listed on the internet. There's no need to talk about the spectacle that was Andre the Giant in professional wrestling. It wasn't just wrestling fans who knew his name, practically everyone did, and he's had some legendary moments in pro wrestling whether he was a heel or a babyface. I feel that most people would associate Andre with the WWF, but Andre also made a name for himself in Japan, and it was in Japan where Andre had his final match. December 4th, 1992, Tokyo, Japan, All Japan Pro Wrestling, Andre Giant Baba and Rushir Kimura versus Haruka Aigen, Masanobu Fuji and Motoshi Okama. There's a video available of this match on YouTube. It's a fan cam and the quality isn't great, but take a look at the comments and you'll see a lot of people talking about how sad the match is. Andre moves very slowly around the ring and it appears he has some difficulties walking, but he still partakes in a few small comedy spots that the crowd enjoys, and Andre gets the win for his team after tagging in at the very end of the bout. A few months before this, in September 1992, Andre made his final USA TV appearance when he appeared at WCW Clash of the Champions 20, an anniversary event that celebrated the stars of the past. Andre died on January 28th, 1993 at 46 years old, so it was shortly after this match in Tokyo, Japan. The ninth wonder of the world is remembered as a cornerstone of D-Generation X, but she also stood out on her own as a unique female competitor in the world of pro wrestling. Personally, I loved her work with Eddie Guerrero. It was one of those on-screen relationships that benefited both parties immensely. But Chyna did not end her career in a WWF or WWE ring. After a 3-month stint in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Chyna would show up in TNA where she'd end up having her final match. Chyna and Kurt Angle versus Jeff and Karen Jarrett at TNA Sacrifice on the 15th of May 2011. Chyna got a submission victory over Karen to win the match for her team, and she would then leave TNA shortly afterwards. Chyna passed away in April 2016, so there were a few years in between her final match and her untimely death. And Chyna at least had her last match on a platform that, at the time, was more widely available than, say, New Japan or All Japan. While Rick Rude would stay around wrestling as part of D-Generation X and WWF and as a part of the NWO and WCW, Rude's final match took place years before these factions came into existence. Rude dropped the International World Heavyweight title to Sting at Spring Stampede 1994, but a rematch took place at Wrestling Dontaku in New Japan. This show was co-produced by WCW, and in Rude's final match, he recaptured the International World Championship. During the match, however, Rude landed awkwardly after taking a dive from Sting on the outside. Rude injured his back and he didn't wrestle again, although it's been said that he was training for a comeback during his final days in WCW. Rude's final TV appearance took place on a WCW Nitro Backstage Blast on April 5th, 1999, and around 2 weeks later he was found unconscious by his wife after suffering from heart failure. Razor Ramon was one of WWF's coolest wrestlers of the 90s, and when the bad guy jumped ship to WCW, he would help change the wrestling landscape forever as a founding father of the New World Order. Scott fell on hard times, of course, and his addictions and recoveries were well documented, but Scott was able to make WWE appearances during a time in his life when he was doing much better for himself. His final match though happened on the 17th of June 2016. He won the infamous DDT Iron Man Heavy Metal Championship by pinning Chuck Taylor, though to be fair, it isn't much of a match. Scott won a game of rock, paper, scissors against Joey Ryan, and this meant he was allowed to pin Chuck and win the championship. This one's available on YouTube and it's presented by First Wrestling. The title change has been uploaded to their channel. Scott did make further TV appearances after this match though for WWE. He passed away on the 14th of March 2022. Eddie was still a very prominent superstar when he died in 2005. 5 days before he passed away from heart failure, he wrestled a Survivor Series team qualifier match against Mr. Kennedy, a match that Eddie won via disqualification. This episode of SmackDown aired on the 11th of November, though it actually took place on the 8th. The referee got knocked out, Eddie banged the canvas with a steel chair before throwing it over to Kennedy, and the referee thought that Kennedy had just used the chair on Guerrero, resulting in Latino Heat getting the DQ victory. Kennedy got some revenge though by hitting Eddie with a chair for real after the final bell, and then the next week on SmackDown, the company paid tribute to Eddie by dedicating the entire show to his life and career. Owen Hart's final match happened at a house show in what's now known as the Allstate Arena in Chicago. He teamed up with Jeff Jarrett to battle Edge and Christian, though as far as I'm aware, no footage of the match exists. The house show took place on May 22nd, 1999, the night before the Over the Edge 99 pay-per-view where Owen had his accident. His last televised match aired on the May 17th episode of Raw where he and Double J took a loss to The Godfather and Val Venus. Macho Man Randy Savage is another guy who became established in WWF before heading over to WCW, winning both the WWF Championship and WCW World Heavyweight Championship while also becoming a household name. The Macho Man, however, didn't have his final match in World Championship Wrestling. He made his final WCW appearance in a number 1 contendership battle royal on the May 3rd, 2000 episode of Thunder, but around 4.5 months later, Randy Savage would show up in TNA. He, AJ Styles, and Jeff Hardy defeated the Kings of Wrestling, Jeff Jarrett, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash in a 6-man tag match at Turning Point 2004. Randy didn't compete in the entire match, but he did show up towards the end to win the match for his team. And for sure, he wasn't the same Macho Man we had witnessed years prior, but that's to be expected. Again, he's another one who got to have his match on a platform that was quite visible to a wide audience. He would pass away 7 years later. The Hot Rod made an appearance on the 13th of June 2011 episode of Raw where he had a quick 1-minute match against The Miz, a match that Piper won. 2 months later, Piper and Bob Orton took on Mick Foley and Terry Funk at a Juggalo Championship Wrestling pay-per-view, Legends and Icons. Orton and Piper won the 4-minute main event, and this would be the final recorded match for the Hot Rod, although he did make a few WWE appearances afterwards. Also at this show, Kevin Nash and X-Pac took on the New Age Outlaws, the Rock and Roll Express took on the Midnight Express, as in Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, and Bob Backlund had a match against Ken Patera. Piper would pass away 4 years after his final recorded match. Big Van Vader was one of the most intimidating and feared men in all of pro wrestling, with his time in WCW in particular standing out. The WWF didn't capitalise on the big man as well as they could have, unfortunately, but he still made his presence felt after making his WWF debut in 1996. Throughout 2013 to 2017 though, Vader worked practically everywhere he could get booked. He was working shows in Japan, shows in England, he made a pit stop in TNA, and in May 2017 he had his final recorded match in an independent show named Wrestle Jam 5. Vader took on a competitor known as the Iron Man in his final bout, and Vader won this matchup with a Vader bomb. This one's available on YouTube, and if you check it out, you'll also see Vader cutting a promo before the match. It's a fan cam, but it's also in very good quality. Vader died the following year after a month-long battle with pneumonia. He was also battling heart issues. The American Dream has around 3,900 recorded matches to his name, going all the way back to 1968, making it all the more impressive when you learn his final match happened in 2007. Dusty competed in a bull rope match against Randy Orton on pay-per-view. It happened at the 2007 Great American Bash, and the Legend Killer was able to defeat the son of a plumber in a match type that really should have suited Dream. Go back and watch this one though, because the fans still absolutely love Dusty Rhodes, and it's a fun gimmick match too, all things considered. Still though, Dusty would make a lot of television appearances afterwards, and towards the end you could find him every now and then making NXT appearances or getting interviewed for WWE documentaries and whatnot. Dusty suffered from kidney disease. He had a fall in his home on June 10th, 2015, and it was announced that Dusty died the following day. John Huber became known to a wider audience when he portrayed Luke Harper in WWE, a member of the Wyatt family who rose in prominence quite quickly when the group were brought to the main roster. After some turbulence during his final days with WWE, he made his debut with All Elite Wrestling on the March 18th, 2020 episode of Dynamite as the leader of the Dark Order faction. In December that same year, Brodie Lee passed away at just 41 years old. His final match took place on AEW Dynamite. His TNT title was on the line. He had a dog collar match against Cody Rhodes, which he lost, but fans of Brodie should 100% still check it out. It's still one of my favourite matches that ever aired on Dynamite. This one took place during COVID restrictions, so it's missing a large audience. Curt Hennig was well known for his stints in the AWA, the WWF and WCW. Mr. Perfect had some great matches under his belt by the time he debuted in WCW in the 90s, and many were shocked to see Curt make a surprise WWE return at the 2002 Royal Rumble. Curt did not end his career in WWE though. He was let go just 5 months later, and then in October he debuted for NWA TNA. His final match would take place on the 8th of January 2003 where he defeated David Flair in an axe handle on a pole match, and honestly, it wasn't good. Curt didn't even climb up to get the axe handle, yet he was still awarded the victory, seeing as he was first to use it. This one is available on YouTube also, and like many of the superstars featured in this video, sometimes it's best to just skip over these and stick with what you know. Curt would die 1 month after this matchup. He may have been a heel in WWE, but fans still appreciated Umaga's work because he was pretty damn good in the ring. He was an agile big man that got a great push in WWE that would lead to some memorable matches, one of which being his excellent last man standing match against John Cena at the 2007 Royal Rumble. Umaga failed a wellness test in 2009 and he refused to enter rehabilitation, so he found himself on the independent circuit. His last match happened in Sydney, Australia on the Hulkamania Let the Battle Begin tour, where he was defeated by Mr. Anderson. This match took place on November 28th, 2009, and Eddie Fatu would pass away days later after suffering 2 heart attacks. When the Warrior left WWF for the final time in 1996, he got himself a nice 3-match contract with WCW, ending with the disastrous Hollywood Hogan match at Halloween Havoc 1998. This, however, wouldn't be the Warrior's final match. 10 years later, in the European New Wrestling Evolution promotion, Warrior would have a match against Orlando Jordan for the NWE World Heavyweight title. And what's more, the Warrior won the 17-minute match. Yeah, 17 minutes. Warrior's daughters got the opportunity to see him wrestle in this one. It isn't a 5-star classic, but the whole match is available online, and what's more, the production values aren't too bad either. This one happened on the 25th of June 2008. In 2004, Warrior was inducted into WWE's Hall of Fame, and on the Raw after WrestleMania 30, the Warrior made his final television appearance one day before his death. Mike Awesome's final match was one that was seen by many people, but throughout it, those same people listened to ECW commentator Joey Styles completely rip Awesome apart. Mike's final recorded match took place at ECW One Night Stand 2005. He rekindled his rivalry with Masato Tanaka at the WWE produced show, and it was a hard-hitting and violent affair that, simply put, is 10 minutes of some of the most brutal spots you'll ever see in a WWE pay-per-view. Joey Styles talked about Awesome leaving ECW for WCW on commentary, and the fans didn't give Mike the warmest of receptions during his entrance, but by the end of the match, the Hammerstein Ballroom were cheering him on while showing their appreciation for the bout. Mike took his own life 2 years later at the age of 42. Similar to Curt Hennig, I don't think anyone would have expected Davey Boy Smith to return to WWE after his second stint in WCW. Smith returned in September 1999 in the middle of the Attitude Era. He got released around 8 months later, and then Bulldog said he was done with pro wrestling. Davey Boy passed away around 2 years after his last WWF appearance, but before his passing, he was trying to get back into ring shape in order to make a comeback. On the 11th of May 2002, he wrestled a 6-man tag match in Winnipeg. Davey Boy Smith, his son Harry Smith, and Zach Mercury wrestled Robbie Royce, The Axe, and TJ Bratt. And once again, this match is available on YouTube. Davey had went back to wearing his classic Bulldog tights, and it looked like he was in great shape, but sometimes we only see what's on the surface, I guess. Just under 2 weeks after this match, the Bulldog died of a heart attack at 39 years old. Yokozuna completely decimated his opponents upon debuting in WWF, and although there was a red and yellow roadblock along the way, it didn't take long for the big man to win the championship. His giant size was what made people pay attention at first, but it was also his giant size that would lead to Yokozuna having problems. He was given a few chances to cut down in weight, but he was unable to do so, and ultimately the WWF let Yokozuna go. His final match was during the infamous and highly covered Heroes of Wrestling pay-per-view, where he was rumoured to be around 760 pounds. He also said he wanted to get bigger. Yokozuna was supposed to take on King Kong Bundy at Heroes of Wrestling, but seeing as Jake Roberts showed up in an absolute state, the decision was made to change the main event into a tag team match. Yoko and Roberts versus Jim Neidhart and Bundy. The match change happens in the middle of Roberts versus Neidhart. This one took place on October 10th, 1999, and what everyone says is absolutely true. This match is truly a train wreck, and the fact that it goes on for over 15 minutes is absolutely shocking. It has to be up there as one of the worst wrestling matches ever, and it's also Yokozuna's last recorded match. Bundy and Neidhart win this bout, and Yoko would pass away on October 23rd, 2000 at 34 years old. Brian Adams became known to WWF audiences when he joined Demolition as Crush. The Crush character would go through quite a few changes though, and his face and heel turns would always get accompanied by a new look. In late 1997, Crush would jump over to WCW where he would wrestle under his real name as part of the NWO, and later on in WCW he would form a tag team with Brian Clark known as Chronic, who seemed to be fondly remembered in some corners of the internet. People liked the pairing of these two big dudes, and they both returned to WWE during the Invasion storyline. Brian had his last match while in the Chronic tag team, but the match happened in Japan. Chronic versus Keiji Muto and Bill Goldberg. The match is on YouTube, but the quality isn't great. I'm sure it can be hunted down though if you wanted to watch it with a bit more clarity. But yeah, it's definitely a very interesting matchup. Chronic took a loss here. It goes for nearly 18 minutes. Goldberg wins it for his team by hitting a jackhammer on Brian Clark. This one took place on the 19th of January 2003 for the W1 promotion, a promotion that had close ties to All Japan Pro Wrestling, but Bryan suffered a spinal injury in this very matchup that would lead to his retirement. Bryan passed away around 4.5 years later after mixing painkillers, sedatives, and muscle relaxants. Honestly, I could have went on and on here with the amount of pro wrestlers who have passed away, but I'll stop here, and if you guys want, we can always do a second part in the future. There's a lot of final matches we could have talked about, but keep in mind too that some of the final matches weren't recorded. We're lucky we've got some of these online right now, and that's thanks to the guys and girls who originally recorded the matches. We got through 18 final recorded matches today, so if there's more you want to see, let me know in the comments, and I'll find out if any footage exists or if there's any more information regarding the final time the wrestler stepped inside the ropes. Thanks for watching this one, guys, and take care.